Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Paul Graves. I'm a senior project manager with the town of Barnstable Department of Public Works. And this meeting is regarding the town's portion of Route 132, Iowa Road, in the town of Barnstable. With us here tonight are some of my colleagues, town engineer Griffin Bowden, Kelly Colby in the back, communications director, Jim Kupfer with planning and development, and of course our consultant, Steve Rhodes with VHB. And again, we appreciate you being here. The purpose of the meeting is to basically formally kick off this project and get input from you as to your insights on how we can improve Route 132, and we'll be grateful for any comments you can provide us. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So like Paul said, we're really here tonight to gather your input, what you're seeing in the corridor, ideas you might have for improvements, and we'll take all the information in and let it inform the next steps of the project. I have a pretty short slide deck here. It's only 16 slides or so, so we'll go through this, and then we can open up to a question and answer session with microphone, and then we're happy to stick around afterwards and take questions if you'd rather just ask us one-on-one. Yes, and this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the town's website. So a quick outline of what we'll go through. We're going to look at the project area, the study area and limits, the status, the existing issues and the goals. What are the next steps? And then we'll go into that Q&A. So our project limits are on the west from the intersection of Route 132 and Bierce's Way, including the signalized part of the intersection, to the airport rotary. There's currently 4 existing signalized intersections within the study area. There's Bierce's Way, there's the Festival Plaza, Independence Drive, and Cape Cod Mall State Driveway. So we started off this project by performing traffic counts on the corridor. The Cape Cod Commission was very helpful and provided staff to do those traffic counts. And we got that done in the summer of 2022. We then moved on to the beginning of the project traffic study and corridor report. As we were doing that, we integrated a road safety audit. And that's a process that Mass DOT initiates, and it was an in-person meeting component and a site walk component with Mass DOT, the Cape Cod Commission, town staff, and various safety departments of the town, where everybody got together and talked about the existing roadway, kind of brainstormed some problems and solutions, and I went out there and saw that. And a lot of the pictures I have in later slides of the existing issues are from that meeting itself, so it was pretty fruitful in that regard. The traffic report is going to look at the existing and future traffic conditions of the roadway, and we'll also look at the non-vehicle component of the roadway, the active transportation components, pedestrians and bikes, and transit. So our public outreach program, this is beginning tonight. It's the first of many public outreach and input opportunities as the project progresses. The survey will be the next big step, on the ground survey of the corridor to develop a base map to start the design improvement layout on. The timeline of that and of starting design are TBD at this point. And then it's a long-term project. The town has submitted an eligibility request to Mass DOT, and the project has been stated that it's eligible for state and federal funding through the State Transportation Improvement Program. So that is the path that the town would like to take toward this project being constructed. Nothing is finalized yet. It needs to be placed on the regional program for construction with the Cape Cod Commission, but that is kind of the timeline that the town is looking at. I wouldn't really want to guess too far up, but in the range of 5 to 10 year horizon before this is ready for construction. So you might know a lot of these things just from driving, walking on the roadway. It's kind of a long list, but kind of boils down into a few buckets. So there's lack of consistent pedestrian facilities out there, and it's just not very pleasant to walk the roadway as a pedestrian. There's long driveway crossings, there's no crosswalks outside of the signalized areas. There's a lot of high speed out there, and you get pretty close to the roadway in a lot of locations. There's no modern bicycle infrastructure. The road was built with vehicles in mind, and there's a lot better standards for that today that exist. From a roadway perspective, the shoulders are a little bit too narrow for what we like to see for drainage purposes and for emergency vehicle access. There's a large number of curb cuts out there with a lot of businesses, and the existing turning movements out there can use some improvements. There's a lot of left turns that get kind of stacked up, and people get into conflicts with that when that happens, when there's not dedicated turn lanes for people trying to make lefts. There's also access management issues with some, right in, right outs that don't get followed all the time. So we'll have to improve that. And then there's just in general a little bit of an inconsistent lighting program out there. So these next few slides are going to walk through some of the photos to kind of illustrate the issues. The first one on the left is a pedestrian desire line. This is at the Trader Joe's Plaza State Driveway. And these are participants at the road safety audit following that desire line, where a sidewalk could be a good improvement there. On the right, illustrating the lack of bicycle infrastructure, looks like the participants at the safety audit encountered a biker on the sidewalk. And whenever this happens, of course, there's no room for everybody. So people have to walk on the grass, the biker gets squeezed to the edge of the roadway, not a desirable situation. The little no left turn sign kind of illustrating the current attempt at access management. Nothing really physically can stop anyone from making a left turn. It's just suggested that they shouldn't do that. So it leads to some kind of traffic confusion and issues today. And then on the right, again, another kind of tense photo of someone just biking in the lane, traveling there. Of course, that's allowable by Mass General law, but it's not preferred for many bikers. So looking to improve on that for sure. This is the Festival Plaza signal today. There's lack of modern signal equipment, which is a theme throughout the signals on the corridor. There's some improvements can be made to better link the signals and their timings. But specifically for this intersection, there's no dedicated left turn lane. So people that are trying to turn into the plaza effectively, take away that second through lane. So the multi-purpose lane can use some upgrades there. And then lastly, on these series of photos, this is where the sidewalk pinches in as you approach the Independence Drive intersection. San Diego's is on the left. We have the signage for the airport to turn onto Independence Drive. And it just kind of gives a sense of what it's like to walk on the corridor today. You don't have a consistent separation from the roadway. Lack of separation from the roadway, shoulder, everything's kind of working inward here. So definitely no intent to be able to read all these things. More of an illustrative slide here to indicate just how many businesses curb cuts are out there. So each one of these white squares is a driveway entrance. Some businesses have multiple entrances. So something we can look at as far as, can we consolidate any of these? Everything's on the table. We obviously have to talk with business owners and make sure that can work for them. But there's a lot that can be done to kind of take a look at the access to the existing businesses along the corridor. Some of the goals, we're looking to construct context-sensitive improvements to the roadway. So realizing that bikes and pedestrians and transit all have a place along the roadway corridor for improvements. There can be improvements to the signalized intersections, like I said, to standardize the lane layout at these locations and with the goal of reducing congestion, improving the flow of the traffic through the intersections. One of the big things that came out of the road safety audit is that the existing center median would be a big benefit to extend all the way through the corridor. That'll do a lot for access management, for as far as restricting people from turning left when they shouldn't be. It'll make for some pockets where potential mid-block crossings can be added for pedestrians to have a refuge area. So there's a lot of benefits to that, and we're going to look into that in pretty good detail. Speaking to the crosswalks, overall goal to improve pedestrian safety out there by installing additional mid-block crosswalks. So that when I say mid-block, areas outside of the traffic signals where they can be safely installed and give pedestrians good access to the north and south side of the roadway. And that driveway theme keeps coming up, looking at defining the driveways, making a consistent kind of appearance or curb cuts, access issues. We can look at roadside lighting ties into all of this to give a more safe experience for people walking or biking on the roadway when it's not daylight hours. And then there's a major component of this area itself, which is working into the transportation network that's being built up right now by the town and by Mass DOT. The Cape Cod Rail Trail is just one of those, but there's active projects that are going on Beerce's Way to build a new shared use path from Route 28 up to Route 132, where it'll meet the existing multimodal path along Route 132. So that's at our western limit of work for this project. The recently built sidewalk on Independence Drive will touch in with this project and will connect up to the future extension of Cape Cod Rail Trail Phase 3, which is going to bring the Cape Cod Rail Trail from Yarmouth into Barnstable, ending at Meriden Road at Independence Drive. And then Phase 4, which is the green outline, it's probably a little bit hard to see, but inside the red box here, Phase 4 is going to extend the regional network of the rail trail to the Sandwich Town line. So a lot to come, and this project can play a pretty big part in the interconnections that are possible for that actual transportation network as this infrastructure gets built out concurrently with this project. So we want to take your feedback, questions, ideas, anything we can take from tonight and kind of build into the next steps of the project, which is going to be looking at conceptual level improvements to the road layout, to pedestrian improvements, bicycle accommodations, and additional crosswalks. And the next public meeting is to be determined, but it'll be no later than the Mass DOT design public hearing, which is required to be held when the project reaches the 25% design stage. And then, like I said earlier, the final design, when is this going to be ready for construction, to bid for contractors to work on, is TBD at this point. So with that, we are happy to take any questions. And I'll just pass the mic off.
I'm very impressed. I came here tonight thinking, I use this roadway quite a bit. When was the last time this roadway was updated? Can you answer that? What would you say? It seemed like 12, 15 years ago?
So I'm not sure when the most recent upgrade of this roadway was. I know we did a resurfacing project a couple of years back as really an interim solution because the surface of the roadway was in a deteriorating conditions, and we knew we were planning this project. So we did a resurfacing project really to get us to the horizon of this project. But it's been a while and it's due for an upgrade. It really doesn't really meet the modern standards of a complete roadway these days.
Is it too early to give an estimate for money, and who's paying for it?
So right now the town is funding the survey and design of the improvements. So that's where my company VHB comes in. We will design this. And then I believe if the town is successful in getting the project placed on the regional tip plan, that it'll be state and federal funding for construction.
One piece to that, the current design is being funded by Cape Cod Commission DRI mitigation funds. So it's actually being funded from mitigation funds that go into a pool for the community when developments of regional impact come into the community. So it's actually not tax dollars that's paying for it right now.
I wonder, thank you very much.
Yeah.
What initiated this? I'm curious. Was it a town engineering review? I can't thank you guys enough. I had no idea. I know 2 months of the year, there's nothing we can do to relieve that congestion. But when you bring up everything else, I had no idea just how bad it was. I get a kick out of the speeding. They're right in front of the Barnstable Police headquarters. How come we don't have an officer standing out there? I'm joking. Great. I get a kick out of people blowing by me because 60 miles an hour, I'm going to say hi to them at the next stoplight. But I thank you for all the work that your engineers are doing. I think it's very neat.
Thank you, sir.
A couple quick points. On your divider going all the way down, between the Kmart Plaza or the mall down to the rotary, there are no lights. So there's no opportunity for left turn lanes or U-turns. You know, putting that kind of traffic into the rotary is going to be a mess because we know nothing's going to happen with the rotaries for some period of time. So I think some thought has to be given either to U-turn areas or whatever in that stretch. Dividers are great. You know, no left turn signs do not work, that's for sure. Even those businesses that have gotten special permits have gone to the planning boards that prohibit left turns. You know, over a period of time, that road gradually comes out to a 45 or a 90-degree angle, and you know, it's a free-for-all there at that point. So other than that, and the sidewalks obviously needed. The whole area needs sidewalks, and again, standardization of those intersections with left turn lanes and everything will be very helpful.
Thank you for the comments. One thing you mentioned that I do want to bring up is Mass DOT is actually actively planning a retrofit of the airport rotary, so an improvement of the airport rotary to make it function a little better, as well as an extension of the ongoing Route 28 and Yarmouth Road intersection improvement project. That stops right at Mary Dunn Road, kind of before the airport. So they are planning to take those project limits all the way to the rotary so that that whole section is completed. Don't have a clear timeline on that yet, but they are actively working on that design. So.
Okay. So I guess a question about the intersection operations. I know you talked about maybe synchronizing the lights so that traffic flows continuously when it can. On the other hand, talking about making the U-turns at different locations, what I call roundabouts, which are like rotaries but they work better. Is that something that you could consider at some locations here? Because that would, again, work really well with a median. It will give people a chance to reverse direction and also have the benefits of traffic flow and lower speed incidents, fewer rear ends, and such like.
Yeah, that's good points. The added median will definitely be done in concert. We're looking at the left turn, U-turn pockets to, you know, facilitate traffic, so it doesn't have to go long distances out of the way to make that left turn. And then Mass DOT has a fairly new process called intersection control evaluation, which has certain triggers, and not every project triggers it. This project does. So anytime you're looking to add new signalized equipment, you have to go through the process of kind of proposing what you'd like to do for a solution and then looking at some alternatives. And roundabouts are one of those alternatives. So for whatever solutions we come up with, whether it's adding a new signalized location or upgrading, adding turn lanes to an existing location such as Festival Plaza, we'll have to go through that process to kind of evaluate it. And I can say we'll be thinking of that, you know, corridor wide without even the requirements that we're held to follow. We'll be thinking of that as we develop the design.
Thank you. Clearly, you've described a horrible 132 as it is, and you haven't skipped a beat at all. I just have two questions. Number one, have you considered a crossway between the old Cook's, I'm sorry, I don't know, what is that new restaurant called? The Knack, and Holiday Inn across the street? I've seen people run across that road, 4 lanes to get to, you know, shopping plazas as well as to get to the restaurant. And the other thing is, given that this is 5 to 10 years out, is there any possibility of doing something temporarily in the summer because of the influx of people? You have all those students that come from abroad, and I know they think they're coming to a beautiful coastal town, but if they happen to end up in our coastal village, it's really, you know, hazardous on that road, and it's been proven in at least 2 cases in the past that did not end well. So is there anything in the meantime, even a little town like, a little village like Centerville puts up the cones, do not, you know, pedestrians only cones in that little town. Can we do anything in the meantime? And also between the new mall across the street where Panera Bread is, whatever's going there, and the major mall, that crosswalk never seems to be functioning very well. And if that's gonna be a continual use, maybe just something to help people like before 5 years and 10 years. But it's a great plan. Thank you.
Thank you. So I can speak first to the question on additional crosswalks. So we're gonna take kind of a whole picture approach to looking at locations where there's pedestrian desire lines to cross from one side of 132 to the other. I can think of, just off the top of my head, like some desire lines coming out of the Holiday Inn to the edge of the roadway. We can tell people are walking from there, they're going somewhere. So we'll take a look at that. We'll evaluate areas where we can provide new crosswalks where they don't exist today to help kind of facilitate that access. And then Paul or Griffin, maybe you can speak a little more to the interim.
Yeah, thank you for your comments on some interim solutions as well. I mean, we're always looking for short-term and long-term solutions, right? So this is a long-term planning effort, we acknowledge that, right? However, there are potential opportunities that this long-term effort can inform, right? So as we go through this process, if there's opportunities that present themselves to make short-term improvements to the corridor that won't be effectively sunken cost, right? Because all these improvements are very expensive, right? So we try to do that in a cost-conscious but also safety-conscious manner. To your point on the mall traffic signal, we are in the process of making some upgrades to the signal, and we've been doing that over the course of the last year or so, because there is old antiquated traffic signal equipment there, and it does fail occasionally. I know we had a rodent issue with one recently, right? So we had to go in and we had to exterminate the rodents and fix the equipment and stuff like that. So that does occur, and that's a reality of equipment, right? And so we continue to maintain that type of equipment and try to upgrade it in a smart manner as we can. But certainly always trying to look at short-term solutions when we can do so in a smart manner.
I have two questions. One is, not having any background in this, if you're gonna add a dedicated left turn lane, and you're gonna add sidewalks and add bicycle lanes, my assumption, which might not be correct, is that we're gonna be widening the road in order to gain all that space. Is that a true assumption?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then my second question is, does your company work only in Massachusetts? Do you work outside of the state of Massachusetts?
We work all up and down the East Coast. So VHP has offices from South Burlington, Vermont, all the way down to Orlando. So we work on the East Coast. Sure. And then to answer your first question, yeah, the roadway itself will be widened from what today exists as the back of sidewalk to the back of sidewalk on the other side of the road, where it is two sidewalks one sidewalk per side. That footprint will be widened, but it's going to be done in a very intentional way. We have to keep the businesses in mind, obviously what they have today for parking and things like that, and we have to kind of keep the overall footprint of just the roadway, the bike infrastructure, and the pedestrian accommodations in mind as we go about the proposed widening.
My reason for asking if you only worked in the state, is there some project near us that if we wanted to go and see what a town would look like who's actually adopted something like this, that you could say, it's in this town, take a day, it's gonna be snowy and rainy or whatever, and you wanna get off Cape. Maybe some examples, even visually, maybe Google Maps or something like that, that we could actually see the end product so that those of us that are visual might be able to get on board. Not that I'm not on board, it sounds great, but just I'm a visual person that way.
Yeah, I can't think of any exact.
Yeah, so as we move into the next phases of the work, we'll be moving into actual design and conceptual designs. And when we bring conceptual designs forward, we usually like to have some pictures that, when this looks great on a plan, but this is actually what it looks like, so you don't have to visualize it from the plan. So certainly as we move into that phase of work, we'll try to have representative pictures for this type of conversation, because it just helps facilitate the conversation much easier.
How wide is the right-of-way? Is it consistent through the whole corridor?
I believe it's 100-foot wide right of way. So there's a fairly substantial right of way, but we, there's already a lot of infrastructure out there, so.
What about
Obviously-
that specific area right there where the wetland is?
I don't know exactly. There is a
You know what
wetland
I'm
right
talking
here, yes, absolutely. So that is one choke point that we will certainly have, along
What
this
would you
corridor.
usually do with something like that?
Well, we're gonna have to look at options, right? So, the challenge on this portion of the road will probably be getting the pedestrian facilities on that side of the road, and we may need to think about, lane shifts or other, smart solutions to get that in. Again, we haven't started putting pen to paper on this yet. We're in the planning process right now. We'll start moving into the preliminary design where we actually start putting things on paper, and then we'll see how everything starts to lay out and start answering some of those solutions. Yes, sir.
Speaking of places where you could see infrastructure that this could look like, I was in Providence, Rhode Island this weekend, and they have separated the bike lanes from the traffic lanes using stanchions, and then also have extensive sidewalk networks. We have got to make this town more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. And trees have got to be part of that process. We've clear cut this town and there are no trees anywhere. It's pretty horrible. I'm old enough to remember when Storyland was where the mall is now, and it was all trees the whole way. There's two things that I think need to be done before 5 to 10 years, and that is from the Trader Joe's Plaza, both on Route 132 and Route 28, there is no sidewalk. And there are constantly people walking there. I live in Barnstable Village, I go into shop in Hyannis, I constantly see people walking there. It's extremely dangerous. In terms of where that wetland is, along the river in Providence, they've put a boardwalk wherever they can't fit it in. We can do creative things and make it look attractive. It's the speed of the traffic here is so, any pedestrian accident is probably gonna be a fatality on Route 132.
Couldn't agree more with everything you said there, right? So I'll try to take them all one by one, right? So certainly this wetland area, there are a number of opportunities, right? There may be opportunities to collaborate with the property owner there, right, as well, or have some common sense approach to it rather than impacting wetlands. But to your point on boardwalks, we've done that in this community as well, down at Mill Pond and Marston's Mills, where we ran into a very similar situation. We did not have enough room and we installed a boardwalk, and I think it came out great, right? To your point on bicyclist facilities, the community just became a complete streets community really for that reason, right? We acknowledge the fact that we need to improve our complete streets nature of our roadway network. This certainly is not a biker-friendly corridor. It's not easy to make this a biker-friendly corridor. It's going to take significant investment, right? So that's really one of the biggest overarching reasons why we're here and doing this, is because we need to make this corridor more bicycle-friendly. And I agree with you 100% that we need to incorporate street trees and beautification into the plan as well, because it's got more of a highway feel to it than a desirable feel to it, right? So that's something that we certainly will prioritize as part of the project. Yes.
I would also mention that bringing the rail trail down into Hyannis is an economic development issue, and I don't
100%.
think people here see that. If you want to see a business that is flourished, go down to Orleans and go to the Hot Chocolate Sparrow. It's a destination for people to go on the bike path. We need to be looking at thinking of things like that, but particularly even up at that intersection of Independence Drive and Mary Dunn Road. You've allowed the permitting of hundreds, if maybe not 1,000 apartments with no accommodation for where people could walk to get a cup of coffee or to get a sandwich. That's a perfect location to have little villages around the village of Hyannis to make it more like a real town.
Right. No, appreciate the input and certainly agree with you on the Cape Cod Rail Trail, and we're working as diligently as possible to bring the Cape Cod Rail Trail to this community, right? Like, so phase 3 of the Cape Cod Rail Trail, which is from Yarmouth to Mary Dunn Road, is going to be bidding this year, right? So that will be a reality that the rail trail will be in the community, and then phase 4, we're actively in the planning of that right now. We've started surveying the corridor, and we're transitioning into design. We're actually working with Steve and his firm on that project as well. So we do really look at this as a large network, and I certainly agree 100% with what you're saying. We also are about to start construction on a shared use path on Versus Way, which will kind of ultimately connect to this project as well as the Cape Cod Rail Trail, and will be able to bring bicyclists right into downtown from the Cape Cod Rail Trail. So we're thinking the same way as you, it just takes time. Yes, ma'am.
Just kind of related to what Doug and this woman had mentioned, this reminds me of Speen Street in Natick in the 70s. And that's all I can think of is just what a mess it was. And I don't know if what they've done is a good solution or not, but I'm wondering if your traffic study delineated between cars that are going straight through and cars that are stopping and going in and out of malls and curb cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the traffic counts that were performed on the roadway can help us assess where certain volumes are in certain sections of the roadway. So we take that information in, and we can use that to look at how can we make the signals more efficient, like in their timings and things like that. So that's all part of the equation when it comes to kind of getting people through the corridor, not just vehicles, bikes and pedestrians, in a more efficient way.
I'm just thinking whether there should be two roads, one for local access and one for going straight through, like in the Natick Route 9 area.
The challenge in that is always the space available that the right-of-way needs. I haven't talked any real conceptual design solutions tonight, but most of them involve some right-of-way actions that need to be taken on. The town wants to take some easements potentially for some of these solutions. That said, this all depends on the path that the project takes in the next few steps. Nothing's been put on paper at this point. We're assessing it, but any of those kind of more local through solutions are pretty wide in the space they require, and it might not be quite the right fit for this corridor with the businesses that already exist kind of close to the front.
So most of the traffic was accessing local business, it wasn't going straight through to the rotary from here?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the numbers show, but yeah, we do have some data.
I'm wondering if there's gonna be any coordination between the MassDOT, state-owned portion, and the town-owned portion, because one of the things I've noticed is that basically from Independence Drive to Shoe Flying Hill, if you're going north, you seem to hit every red light, and so that tends to increase people's speed, and they try to beat light to light to light to light. And, it's great if we do it for our section, but if we don't coordinate it with the state, then that just compounds the issue.
It's a good question. So the specific scope of this project will not take on a overall corridor timing exercise from Route 6 to the airport rotary. That said, when improvements are made, I think it opens the table to discussing that with Mass DOT. Both parties have to work together to kind of come to that.
Yeah, one thing I'll add is our ultimate project goal is for Mass DOT to be a partner here. I mean, we ultimately own the corridor, but we're ultimately hoping that this project will be recognized as being regionally impactful as it is, right? And hopefully that opens up dollars from the state and federal government, and we can bring them in as a partner, and we can have some of those discussions, right? Because ultimately, if that improves success of the whole corridor, there's value in that. I will say it is very difficult to time these traffic signals that are spaced that far. Even when you think you got it perfect, one person hits the brakes and it throws everything off, right? So it always, it's always very desirable to try to do that, but it's never a slam dunk that can be achieved. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Alright, I'm just shocked that I think I agree with every single thing that everyone's said here tonight, so it's alright, second everything that everyone's said. I honestly, I didn't think about the roundabout option as a control at certain intersections. I thought it was just too much volume, but if the options that y'all develop include a roundabout, I think that'd be fantastic. Very, very reliable and resilient, I would say, especially, storms don't really knock out the operation of a roundabout. So it does with traffic signals. Two things I didn't really hear so much. Public transportation is really lacking in this corridor. I live down by the Steamship Authority and try to visit this area, and I kind of drank the Kool-Aid when it comes to multimodal transportation. It's just, you can't participate in public transportation here. It's too infrequent. I'm not really sure how the routes work, but I think that would go a long way to addressing congestion in this corridor. Especially for the younger people who go through the corridor, and we're more apt to use public transportation than, say, older populations. Another thing would be making both sides of the streets accessible for bikes and pedestrians. I don't know if you do that with, say, a minimum 10-foot or, say, a 15-foot wide sidewalk on both sides of the road. Maximum extent possible is great. It's just a tough ask of cyclists to cross a road for a certain stretch and then cross back over. So that would just be one of the asks. I'll end with a question. This includes the intersection of Bursar's Way and 132 as well. That just seems like a very complicated intersection. I didn't know if that was part of the scope of this as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Certainly we will keep buses in mind with this design. There's maybe opportunities to improve bus stops or ability to utilize this corridor better for buses and our, keep our RTA and such. Relative to the intersection, I'll let Steve speak to the scope of Bursar's Way. I believe it's DOT, right?
Believe
Yeah.
it is DOT owned. Yep.
So our scope stops just before it.
There. But yeah, basically improving up to the intersection. Yep.
If I remember correctly, for the Great Streets design for downtown Hyannis, there's plan to use paint to improve safety and reduce speeding, et cetera. Might that be done here on an interim basis to help?
We have a very different corridor here, right? With the two, we have 2 lanes in both directions. There is the desire and need for it to be, have throughput, right? Whereas, kind of with Great Streets, the desire is actually to slow people down and make it more walkable and more business friendly and the such. And certainly we want to make this corridor more business friendly, but I think we just have a different animal here that's some of those principles may not be applicable in this location, but certainly to my comments earlier, if there are short-term solutions that appear during the design process, we'll look to incorporate them.
Don't go away. Okay. So, Route 132 is owned by the town,
Yes,
and Route 28 is a state road.
that's right.
Interesting.
So Route 132 from Bursar's Way to the airport rotary, so just east of Bursar's Way to just west of the airport rotary is owned by the town.
Okay, so the state owns from Bursar's Way down to the Mid-Cape.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you. So, next question is, you have a 100-foot right-of-way. How wide is the street now, Route 132?
So probably 2 11-foot travel lanes, 1 foot shoulder, so 44, 46 feet. 46 feet pavement.
46 feet,
Yep.
and you have 100-foot right of way?
There's areas where it's certainly wider than 46 feet as well, though. So, yeah, no, I mean, we don't have all the dimensions. We certainly can provide that information in a future meeting, but it's the majority of the right of way. It's not less than half. It would be 50 to 60 because it's 4 12-foot lanes plus sidewalk facilities and stuff like
Including
that.
the
So,
sidewalk.
yeah, so
definitely,
including
yeah.
the sidewalk, we're utilizing 60 to 70 feet already.
Okay, so it could get half again as wide, approximately, or 30% again as wide.
That's correct, and certainly with the pedestrian facilities, ideally we'd like to separate them from the roadway, right? So, and have some green space there, so,
Right.
in doing so, the roadway cross-section will be wider, but it won't necessarily be all pavement, but we'll try to maximize the right-of-way to the maximum extent possible, and if certain locations, we'll certainly need to be talking about easements with private property owners as well.
And trees.
And trees are certainly part of the plan, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
So if Mass DOT gives us money for that stretch of 132, do they take over that section?
They would not take over ownership, they would basically, we would get an agreement with them for them to implement the construction, manage and pay for the construction with our oversight, obviously.
The town would retain.
The town would retain
its
ownership,
right to-
that's traditionally what happens. Certainly it could go the other way if the town desired that and the state desired that, but that's not something that's necessarily we're looking to do at this point.
There was a couple of fun things that were kind of pointed out that I just thought were just interesting, like the boardwalk idea to avoid the wetlands. I mean, that's kind of fun. The roundabout ideas I thought were kind of fun. I didn't know if there was anything else that might be considered within the scope, even if the dollar figure might be a little too extraordinary. But perhaps a pedestrian bridge along some of the major crossings, I don't know, between the two malls, I don't know, but is that even something that can be thought about at this stage and just maybe be an illustrative component to the scope?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. Pedestrian bridge is something that has been previously discussed. There was a previous study that was done through this corridor and it was an idea that was thrown out. We're here for these discussion purposes right now, right? So no decisions have been made on what the project scope is yet, right? So certainly those opportunities are there. That would be a very expensive discussion, right? And certainly then we would need to figure out how we would deal with that expensive attribute to the project, right? But certainly if that is that's a smart characteristic to add to the project and it's able to be funded and implemented, then it's something that would be considered. So, I mean, I would say nothing's off the table at this stage. That's what the purpose of this initial discussion is and future discussions is to seek input as to what folks really want to see in this corridor, and then we look to see if it ultimately makes sense technically, as well as if it's something that can ultimately be funded, because ultimately we need to be able to fund the project to implement it, so. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if it's possible, but kudos to whoever designed that area from C Street to the ocean. It's gorgeous. It's just like a diamond in the rough, and that looks like a village. And if there's any way we can bring back the village feel to Hyannis, that would be wonderful. So kudos to the person who designed that. That would be great there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we retained a consultant for the design of that, similar to what we did here, but I will say Paul was the project manager on that project, and he is on this project as well, so we do have that link to that project, and so we'll strive to do something similar.
Just a little bit of a side issue on the pedestrian bridges. I think we've seen on 28 where that was rebuilt. People are amazing. people are not gonna walk 75 feet to use a pedestrian overpass. They very seldom will walk 75 feet to use a crosswalk with the flashing lights or anything else. They cross wherever it's easiest for them.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of what we experienced today, right, and some of the, unfortunately, the fatalities we've seen on this corridor were a result of that, right? It was the most convenient location to cross, maybe at nighttime and other considerations there, but, and you certainly have a hard time convincing people to walk 100 or 200 feet even in another direction to find a safe crossing, so that's something that we have to consider, because you need to consider human behavior as well. To the bridge crossing idea though as well, and we talked about the Cape Cod Rail Trail a little bit, as part of that project with phase 4, we do need to cross Route 132, and there is a plan to install a bridge for that project, kind of similar to what you see on Station Ave in Yarmouth, to cross 132, kind of to the west of Shoe Flying Hill Road, is currently where we're targeting for that location. So.
When you mentioned that the lighting was insufficient, I don't drive a lot at night. What about the lighting is insufficient? Because there's so many businesses and so many people driving around. I'm just wondering what lighting would you add that would be better? Because I'll be honest, I do love the look of that road, but those lights that are installed are so bright. Honestly, when I drive down that road, I like have to shield my eyes. I mean, LED light is everywhere and we have to have it, I know, for efficiency, but it's so overpowering. I mean, between headlights that are glaring, and I'm just curious, like if we're putting a lot more light there, is how that works in such a busy area already.
So when we talk about light levels, we're not necessarily going to replicate or pick up on what the businesses have installed and kind of like reflect that outwards. Mass DOT has standards for lighting. I believe the town has standards for lighting systems being installed. What I'm envisioning right now is probably a lighting enhancement on the pedestrian level. So 14, 15 foot tall lampposts to help make the roadway a safer place at nighttime for people walking and biking along it.
That makes sense. Thanks.
All right.
Okay, thank you everyone. This was great input, and we look forward to bringing this back to you when we have some more to discuss.
Yes, thanks everybody for coming out.